Okay, here's our last video for the semester, and then we have Christmas break. Okay, so what's an acid? Well, it's any substance that produces H plus ions in water, and it has a pH less than 7. Here's some properties of acids. They taste sour, they conduct electricity, they react with indicators to produce a characteristic color, and they are corrosive. So you're going to hear me use the word indicator, and an indicator is a compound that changes color in the presence of an acid or base. An example you can see in the picture. What are some common acids? Acetic acid, otherwise known as vinegar. Ascorbic acid, that's vitamin C. Carbonic acid, that's what's in soda. And hydrochloric acid, that's in our stomach to digest food. Take a look at some more common acids and their uses. What is a base? Well, here's two different definitions. A substance that produces OH negative ions, or called hydroxide ions, in water. Also, it's any substance that accepts H plus ions from acids. Here's some properties of bases. Sometimes they're considered opposites of an acid. They taste bitter, they feel slippery, they conduct electricity, they react with indicators to produce a characteristic color. It's generally the opposite of acids, and they are also corrosive. Bases should not be confused as being safe, since they are the opposite of acids. A common household base is bleach, and as you might know, in contact with skin, it can result in severe. Here are some common bases. Sodium hydroxide, that's found in soap. Aluminum hydroxide, that's in antacids. And ammonia, which is a cleaner. And you can look at some more common bases and their uses in the table. Here's a specific base in drain cleaners. It contains NaOH and aluminum. The NaOH, or sodium hydroxide, dissolves the grease that's stuck in a drain, and the aluminum reacts with the NaOH, producing hydrogen gas, which is bubbles, and that dislodges the solid, such as like a hairball. Ionization, this is the ability to produce ions in water. Both acids and bases ionize in water. Okay, so we're going to talk about the strength of acids and bases. And the strength of an acid or a base depends on how completely the compound ionizes in water, or how completely it separates into its ions. So the more an acid or base ionizes, the stronger. So what is a strong acid or base? Strong acid and bases ionize almost completely. All of their compounds separate to their ions. So what is a weak acid or base? Weak acids and bases only partially ionize. Only some of the compounds separate into their ions. So in the equation below, notice the arrows go back and forth. So that means only some of them are dissolving. Strength and concentration are very different things. Okay, strength refers to how completely an acid or base ionizes, and concentration refers to how much acid or base is in the water. Okay, so we talked about pH earlier, and I told you what pH an acid was and what pH a base was. So what is pH? Well, pH measures how many H plus ions are in this solution. It tells the strength of an acid or base. The pH scale is a tool used to determine the strength of an acid or base. It tells us how many ions in solution. So the pH scale ranges from 0 to 14, with 7 in the middle, which is neutral, and 7 is not an acid or base. So bases have a pH greater than 7, and acids have a pH less than 7. So if it's right at 7, it's neutral, and water is neutral. And you can see the scale there below, and you can see a bunch of different stuff on there and kind of give you a reference point. So your strength on a pH scale. So the closer an acid or base is to 7, the weaker it is. So the further an acid or base is from 7, the stronger it is. So pH 1 is strong acid. A pH 6 is a weak acid. A pH 8 is a weak base, and a pH 14 is a strong base. So the closer it is to 7, the weaker it is. The further away from it is, the stronger. Blood pH, so the blood we have in our veins, in order to carry out its many functions properly, the pH of blood must be between 7 and 7.8. So the main reason for this is enzymes. The protein molecules that act as catalysts for many of the reactions in our body cannot work outside this pH range. Your body contains compounds called buffers, and a buffer is something that enables small amounts of acids or bases to be absorbed without harmful effects. Buffers are solutions that contain ions that react with additional acids or bases to minimize their effects on pH. Okay, last couple slides here. The difference between acids, bases, and salts. So remember, an acid has an H in the formula, a base has an OH in the formula, and a salt is going to have a metal and a non-metal, usually a halogen. Mixing acids and bases, and we talked about this last chapter, is a neutralization. So a neutralization occurs. It's a chemical reaction between an acid and a base, and your result's going to be a form of water and salt, and your ending pH is going to be near 7. All neutralization reactions are ionic. A salt is a compound formed from the negative ion of the acid, the non-metal, and it's going to combine with the positive ion of your base, which is a metal. Salts also can be formed when an acid reacts with a metal. The last thing is acid rain. Precipitation with a pH of less than 5.6 is going to be considered acid rain. It's going to form when rain mixes with CO2 as it falls, and it's going to form carbonic acid. Cars and factories emit CO2 into our atmosphere, and that's going to be what is going to give us the acid rain. And the reasons why we don't want acid rain is because it's going to corrode our buildings, it's going to affect plant and animal life.